Hello there, Panda Bears, and welcome back to Storytime. More fun with our autumn, fall Storytime theme. We have Curious George Apple Harvest. There's our front cover. On our back cover, it says Curious George helps the Mackenzies with their harvest and discovers that making cider can be even more exciting than picking apples. It says fun and educational activities inside. In this book, you'll learn about how an assembly line works, making apple cider, and harvest time. I cannot wait to read and discover. So again, let's go through the parts of the book. What's this? Front cover, great. What about this? Back cover, awesome. What is this? Spine. We open up the book and it has a title page. Another title page, good. And also, what does the author do? The author writes the words and the illustrator draws the pictures. Here we go, Curious George Apple Harvest. Remember, each time you read a story, you can choose something to look for. Either the star of the show, the letter of the day, or a sight word, or maybe look for letters that start with your name. Okay, you can always be on a search to look for letters and words. It was harvest time, and the Wrenkins needed help picking apples. George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, were happy to lend a hand. Or foot. There's George using his feet to pick apples. Mr. Wrenkins explained that they needed to collect every apple. I'm going to join the Mrs. Roundback, he said. Once you fill that cart, you can unload it in the washing trough. Mr. Wrenkins took his cart full of apples to the barn and dumped them into the water. It must be their bath time, George thought. There's the water trough. They're putting all the apples in. George climbed up the branches, collected the shiny red apples in his friend's hat, and put them into the cart. What fun! High up in the tree, he saw a jumping squirrel picking apples too. George decided to help. He took Jumpy's apple and tossed it into the back of the cart with the rest of Mr. Wrenkin's apples. But Jumpy wanted that apple for himself. He named the squirrel Jumpy. He leapt in to take it back, and George tried to stop him. Easy now, George. That lever releases all the apples, said his friend. George looked at the lever. See, he's up there. Uh-oh. He thought it was an excellent way to get Jumpy out of the cart. George! No! George pulled the lever and Jumpy tumbled out, along with all the apples. That's okay, said his friend with a sigh. We can gather them up again. But Jumpy had found his apple, and he ran to hide it in the barn. George decided to follow him. George looked around inside the barn in wonder. There were all sorts of things to climb on and swing from. It must be some kind of monkey playground. But George was not there to play. He had to get that apple from Jumpy. If only it weren't so dark in the barn. He found the light switch and flipped it. Everything moved. It was a machine, not a playground. George wondered how it worked. He watched the bucket scoop up the apples. He decided they must carry the apples high away from the squirrels. But wait, where was Jumpy? There he was. Jumpy still had the apple he took from the cart. George chased Jumpy, grabbed the apple, and threw it into a bin high out of reach. Suddenly, the machine stopped. Uh-oh. George found a button and pushed. The machine started again. This time, all of the parts started working, including the moving belt. But when he looked up, he saw all of the Mackenzies' beautiful apples being chopped into bits. The chopped up apples dropped into the giant barrel, and the lid was lowered tightly on top of them. Too tightly. Liquid began to pour out of the barrel. What a mess! George had an idea. He ran up and put his mouth under the liquid. It tasted good, a lot like apples, but there was too much of it. Luckily, he saw some empty containers. George scrambled to put the containers on the moving belt fast enough to catch the liquid. Then he looked down at the end of the belt and saw the containers falling onto the floor. Uh-oh. George ran to catch them. Then he needed to stop the machine. Soon, he had filled all of the containers, but the golden liquid continued to pour. He looked around for another container and saw a big pair of rubber boots. As the last boot was filled, the liquid stopped pouring out and the machine stopped. Whew. He's like, whew. The farmers and George's friend appeared in the doorway. "Well, I'll be," Mr. Renkins exclaimed. George froze. He's like, am I in trouble? The Mackenzies would surely be upset that he ruined all of their apples. "George," Mrs. Renkins rushed up to him, "you've done a fantastic job. All that cider already pressed and bottled? Thank you." Wow, he thought he was going to be in trouble, but they were very happy with what he did and thanked him. "This is some machine," said the man with the yellow hat. "See, the apples are washed here," Mrs. Renkins explained. Then they are lifted up to the chopper because chopped apples give more juice. The juice is pressed out of the apples and then bottled. George had not ruined the apples after all. He turned them into cider. Mr. Renkins handed an apple to George. "Here, you've earned it," he said. George knew someone who wanted the apple more than he did. He had enough apples for one day. Then this says assembly line. When George accidentally turned on the cider press, he learned how cider is made. In each step, a different part of the machine performs a specific task. And when all of the steps are put together, the end result is bottled cider. This process is called an assembly line. Assembly lines allow companies to make their products faster and more evenly. If George had tried to do each step of the cider, making an assembly line by himself, it would have taken a lot longer to fill all of those bottles of cider. And then it has all the different steps of the assembly line to make the cider. Pretty cool. Now it has some fun things that you can do with apples. Apple stars. Did you know that a star is hidden inside each and every apple? Next time you're having apple slices for a snack, ask an adult to cut the apple horizontally across the middle instead of vertically. So you're going to cut it horizontally across the middle from the stem to the base. Inside each half apple, you will find a star. So you're going to cut it down the middle like this. So if we have our apple, instead of cutting it this way, it would be cut this way across the side like that. Apple smiles. Oh, this is cute and fun. Apple smiles. Cider isn't the only thing you can make out of apples. Apple pies, apple sauce, apple butter. Candied apples are just a few of the many treats that can be made with this delicious fruit. With the help of an adult, you can even make apple smiles. Here's how, and it tells us how. You just need 2 sliced red apples, peanut butter or cream cheese, and mini marshmallows. You could probably use Nutella too. Yeah. And it says, ask an adult to cut the red apples into slices. That's the lips. Spread the peanut butter or cream cheese or Nutella on top of the 2 apple slices. Place the marshmallows, these are the teeth, on top of the peanut butter or cream cheese or Nutella, and top with another apple slice. Apple smiles. So you can do apple stars and apple smiles. The end. Thank you so much for listening and reading along with us. I really enjoyed the story. It was super cool and interesting to see how the assembly line worked, taking those apples and turning into apple cider. And I was really excited that it gave us some fun ideas at the end of the story as well, different activities to do with apples, the apple stars and the apple smileys. So pandas, once again, thank you. Make it a great day and have fun exploring with apples. See you soon. Bye.